Welcome back to the series. Today, we're covering the three so-called buffer classes of Chronicle 1, the Prophet, the Warcryer, and the Overlord. Although Shillian Elders and Elven Elders also possessed support magic, I felt it was more appropriate to cover them later alongside the healer classes, where, in my opinion, they belong. The Prophet specialized in providing the largest variety of buffs. The Warcryer combined support magic with surprisingly strong solo capabilities. And the Overlord sacrificed personal convenience in exchange for becoming one of the strongest large-scale support classes in the game. Now, let's talk specifics. One specific Chronicle 1 mechanic that many players sometimes forget to take in consideration is that all the three classes covered in this video shared the heavy armor mastery. Unlike maybe later Chronicles, it wasn't unusual to see a Prophet or a Warcryer fighting alongside the party with a blunt weapon, dual swords, or even a dagger or sword. They certainly weren't dedicated fighters, but generally support classes weren't expected to simply buff and watch. Well, with all being said, of course, that flexibility came at a cost. Inventory management was much more important than most players remember today. A support couldn't comfortably carry a robe set, a heavy set, a blunt plus a shield, a no-grade weapon to fast buff with cheap shots, spirit shots, and soul shots, and hundreds of healing potions all at the same time. Before leaving the town, players actually had to decide what equipment they wanted to bring, and that decision often depended entirely on what their party expected from them. With that in mind, let's start with perhaps the most recognizable support class in the Chronicle 1. The Prophet. The Prophet was considered the definitive buffer of Chronicle 1. While it wasn't particularly strong in direct combat, no other class could match the variety of buffs it provided. As players reached higher-level hunting grounds, finding a Prophet often became just as important as finding another damage dealer. Magic classes stopped learning new skills at level 56. That meant buffs such as Greater Might and Greater Shield simply didn't exist yet. Prophets certainly weren't frontline fighters, but they could 100% help far more than simply refreshing buffs. And, believe it or not, some Prophets even tried using bows occasionally. Definitely not the most optimal way to play, but back then people didn't care as much as today about 100% efficiency. With only 20 available buff slots, however, players constantly had to decide which buffs were actually worth casting instead of simply applying everything they had. Death Whisper, at its highest level, increased critical damage by 50%. Players coming from Interlude may remember only a 35% bonus, but back in 2004 it was considerably stronger. And another iconic skill was Berserker Spirit. Unlike later Chronicles, it didn't increase movement speed, nor did it reduce magic defense. Instead, it only reduced physical defense. Berserker Spirit could also be cast on monsters. Some melee parties intentionally used it as a debuff against stronger enemies. Although the target gained offensive power, the reduction to its physical defense often allowed the party to defeat it much faster. Besides these buffs, the Prophet also brought Might, Shield, Haste, Focus, Bless the Body, Bless the Soul, Magic Barrier, Acumen, Holy Weapon, and many others, making it the most versatile support class in the game. Maintaining all those buffs, however, came at a cost. Fully buffing an entire party consumed a tremendous amount of MP, often leaving the Prophet with very little mana for healing or other utility spells afterward. Although the Warcryer and the Overlord offered fewer buffs, they could strengthen multiple players, or even an entire clan, with a single cast, making them considerably more mana efficient during long grinding sessions. Prophet's solo play somewhat reflected the Prophet's identity. He could decently tank mobs thanks to heavy armor mastery, but he still remained slower than the Overlord or Warcryer. He didn't shine solo, but still, he was able to do stuff on its own when he had to. Inside a party, however, the class truly shined. Finally, reviewing old forums discussions, players almost unanimously described the Prophet as the definitive buffer. Although many players acknowledged that solo leveling could be slower than with other support classes, almost everyone agreed that once a party had a Prophet, the difference was immediately noticeable. Now let's continue with the Warcryer. Choosing a Warcryer meant choosing the Orc race. Orc mystics possessed the highest strength of all magic classes, together with excellent constitution and mentality. The trade-off, however, was very low dexterity and slow movement speed. In return, they became surprisingly durable and could deal respectable melee damage. Also, the Warcryer, similar to the Overlord, had access to 2 blunt stuns, which made them very versatile both in PvE and PvP. The Warcryer is a class that felt enjoyable long before reaching level 40. His kit was somewhat unlocked early on, while many future support classes struggled through their early levels. He could use damage over time spells such as Poison and Chill Flame, combined with Life Drain, to remain healthy. Unlike most mage classes, however, the Orc Shaman could effectively wear robes, light armor, or even heavy armor, starting from a low level. Some players favored robes for faster casting and MP regeneration early on, while others equipped heavy armor and fought much more aggressively, taking advantage of the Soul Cry toggle skill. Perhaps the most iconic Orc mage skill was Soul Cry. Instead of increasing physical attack by a percentage, Soul Cry granted a flat amount of physical attack. This made fast weapons particularly interesting, since every hit benefited from exactly the same bonus. Some players even experimented with daggers, although their naturally low accuracy made this a risky choice. Others preferred the consistency of blunt weapons or dual swords. I think many of us remember in Interlude that Warcryers in solo PvP or in the Olympiad, using a bow. To my surprise, I found out that even in Chronicle 1, some Warcryers experimented with bows due to the Death Whisper chant they had, even without focus. Players coming from later Chronicles, however, may be surprised by how much simpler the Warcryer was in 2004. There was no chant of Predator for critical rate, no chant of Eagle for accuracy, no chant of Vampire for vampiric rage, no chant of Berserker, and no chant of movement, and so on. Also, even the famous Soul Guard toggle was missing back then, making the Overlord and Warcryer not so tanky as later. Inside a party, the class was very valuable. He kept the important buffs active. Join the fight if needed. Use Poison or Freezing Flame against stronger enemies, if mana was available. At the same time, the Warcryer also helped solve one of the Prophet's biggest weaknesses. While a Prophet possessed the largest collection of buffs, fully buffing a large party consumed a tremendous amount of MP. A Warcryer could cover the most important buffs for the group with only a handful of casts, making prolonged grinding considerably more mana efficient for the other supports. Finally, looking through older community discussions reveals a remarkably consistent opinion. Players rarely remembered the Warcryer as simply another buffer. Those discussions confirm what we already said, as they remembered it as the support that could actually fight. Although it never offered as many buffs as the Prophet, nor the large-scale utility of the Overlord, it earned its reputation by striking a unique balance between support and combat. Adaptable, durable, and perfectly capable of leveling on its own if needed, the Warcryer became one of Chronicle 1's most distinctive support classes. Lastly, let's continue with the Overlord. Unlike the Prophet or the Warcryer, the Overlord wasn't designed around ordinary parties. It was designed around the clan. According to the original class description, the Overlord specialized in powerful clan-wide buffs while weakening entire groups of enemies through its unique seal skills. Although it shared many characteristics with the Warcryer, its true potential only became apparent once players entered large-scale PvP and castle sieges. Like the Warcryer, the Overlord inherited the Orc race's exceptional strength and constitution, together with heavy armor mastery, allowing it to fight alongside the front line whenever necessary. It could comfortably wear heavy armor, wield blunt weapons, and actively participate in combat instead of remaining safely behind the group. Also, Chronicle 1 had no CP bar. As a result, the Overlord couldn't restore clan CP as players remember from later Chronicles, making it a very different class from its Interlude counterpart. Back then the Overlord could strengthen every clan member within range, regardless of which party they belonged to. The maximum clan level was 5, which means an Overlord could buff up to 40 clanmates with a single skill. Naturally, that power came at a significant cost. The Overlord's clan buffs consumed enormous amounts of MP, with some requiring well over 250 MP per cast. And, besides its buffs, the Overlord also possessed one of the most unusual skill sets in Chronicle 1. Its famous seal skills weren't ordinary debuffs aimed at a single target. They could affect entire groups of enemies at once. At a time when large-scale crowd control was extremely uncommon, these abilities made the Overlord one of the most disruptive classes on the battlefield. As we said, the Overlord also retained Life Drain, and AoE variants of Poison and Freezing Flame. This made the Overlord very wanted in an AoE mage party where a mage could sleep the mobs, or the Overlord could root multiple mobs, then use those AoE skills and reduce the mob's HP to 1. Then, with just one AoE mage skill, a big pack of mobs could be farmed, reducing mana and spirit shots consumption. Many of the Overlord's strongest abilities were designed for fighting groups of players rather than individual monsters, meaning a large part of its toolkit truly came alive only during PvP. That is why leveling up a Overlord solo, without a clan, is considered as the hardest thing in L2 by some players. In party play, however, it was where the class became unique. He always looked for opportunities to disable multiple enemies with the seal skills. And, whenever necessary, join the front line alongside his buffed clan. Unlike the Prophet or the Warcryer, who both focused almost entirely on strengthening his own party, the Overlord constantly shifted between buffing, debuffing and controlling the battlefield depending on the situation. Finally, looking through older community discussions reveals a remarkably consistent opinion. Many players considered the Overlord one of the more difficult support classes to level, largely because of its enormous MP consumption and the fact that much of its potential only became apparent during large-scale PvP, or well-organized AoE parties. Yet almost everyone agreed on one thing. Once castle sieges began, every serious clan wanted an Overlord. Although all of them shared the same purpose, making their allies stronger, they couldn't have been more different from one another. The Prophet became the definitive buffer, offering the largest collection of support magic in the game. The Warcryer sacrificed some of that versatility in exchange for becoming a capable fighter that could comfortably level on its own while still supporting the party. And finally, the Overlord gave up ordinary party support almost entirely, dedicating itself to strengthening entire clans and controlling the battlefield during large-scale PvP. And that's exactly what made Chronicle 1 so special. Every class had its own identity, its own strengths, and its own role to play. Yet, this identity was very strong. It's true that the game state was not the most optimal and balanced, but at least there was rarely a best choice in terms of class picking. There was only the class that best suited the way you wanted to experience the game. Thank you for watching. If there is something you liked about those 3 classes we covered today in Chronicle 1, let me know in the comments. Or if I missed something, feel free to mention it. That was Exploring Chronicle 1 Episode 3. I'll see you in the next episode.